In our next panel, we are going to dive into issues of food and land justice. I want to welcome back to the stage our fantastic moderator, Rose Scott of Atlanta's NPR. She will be joined by Maurice Bailey, the president and CEO of Save Our Legacy Ourself, also known as SOLO. Tracy, Lloyd, McCurty, the executive director of the Black Belt Justice Center and Co-Alchemist of the Acres of Ancestry Initiative and Black Agrarian Fund. Dr. Caree, Cotwright, the Director of Nutrition Security and Health Equity at the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food and Nutrition Service, and Raphaela Polanco, a farmer and owner of Atlanta Harvest. So Rose, I give it over to you. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much for that, Danny. Well, hello, we're back again. A few weeks ago, I did a similar conversation, and I started out with some audience participation. We're going to do the same thing again, because I asked folks just to throw a word out when I asked them to finish this. Land equals, I heard wealth. What else? Opportunity. Life. Power. Okay. Land equals
liberation.
Liberation. Wealth. And two more. Land equals inheritance. Future. I was waiting for that one. Reparations. Nourishment. Wow. When you heard some of those, what people said, wealth, opportunity, power, liberation, reparations. Raphaela, I'll start with you. What comes to your mind when you hear that?
Freedom.
Yeah.
Yes, freedom.
Land equals?
I said nourishment, and I think about how the land gives us food.
Mm-hmm.
I said liberation, but I would also add ancestral memory.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the land and food justice in that intersection, what do you think people often miss? Raphaela, I'll start with you on that.
I think one thing people miss when it comes to land justice is the help that's needed. You know, there's that saying that it takes a community to raise a child. But at the same time, in today's society, where we're dealing with inflation, and they talk about the millennials and Gen Z, how it's going to be hard for them to even afford housing. As a millennial myself, I have been blessed to be able to be a part of a family that we have been able to gain community partnerships that have helped us be able to gain extra, be able to access land to be able to grow our farm business.
And Caree, I'll leave that question to you too. What do you think people miss when it comes to making that connection between food and land justice?
I think we totally miss out on the interconnectedness. We really have to think about how it all melts together and how we have to work across sectors in order for the land to provide nourishment and to do the things that, like Raphael is doing. And so as I think about that, I think we also miss the history. And as we become stewards or students of the history, we can become stewards for change. And so as we have more understanding, we can have a greater or more production from the land and a better experience.
Tracy, what are folks missing?
One of the African proverbs that grounds our work is, the axe forgets what the tree remembers. The axe forgets what the tree remembers. And when we talk about land justice, I feel so blessed that over the last 5 years, I've joined this fight of our elders for full debt cancellation. They have been fighting for full debt cancellation. This will be the 27th year. And one of the farmers who has been agitating, he's now an ancestor. We lost 3 of our elders over the last year, waiting for justice. And Mr. Slaughter from Buena Vista, Georgia, he said to me, they didn't return the land to us from the Pickford v. Glickman class action lawsuit because they knew we would be free. Land is freedom. And that's what our ancestors were fighting for, and our elder farmers are fighting for.
And still fighting.
Yes.
What if folks like me in the media, we're missing something too, because we're not reporting and we're not disseminating this type of injustice that people should be aware of? And I usually save this question for last, but I want y'all to give it to me. What do we need to do better in terms of making sure we are amplifying these stories in the work that you all are doing? Because that's a big piece of it, right? Sometimes people don't know, and they say, well, I didn't know that. I have the perfect platform for that, because y'all are doing the work. So we need to be better about that. Right, Tracy?
So when we started this journey in 2018 for debt cancellation, again, our elders had been fighting since the disastrous implementation of the Pickford v. Glickman class action lawsuit. Now, it was the largest class action settlement against USDA, and although black farmers were the light bearers for all the lawsuits that came after that, Keep Siegel, Native American, Garcia, Latinx, Women, Love, everyone else got debt cancellation except black farmers. And we were really excited to work on the American Rescue Plan Act that would have allowed full debt cancellation for farmers of color and 20% to address tax liability. And as I'm sure you all know, a subset of white farmers that received over $5 million in subsidy payments challenged the legislation, and I stopped counting after the 12th lawsuit. So it halted the program. So then we had to caucus and represent race-neutral legislation. And I remember my mentor, Lloyd, who is the former director of civil rights for USDA, he said to me, you can get angry, but you're gonna have to accept the fact for black farmers to get anything in this country, white farmers have to get the lion's share and to be centered. And that was very difficult for me to accept, but it's been true. So with the Inflation Reduction Act, $3.1 billion was allocated for debt cancellation. The debt of black farmers is less than $210 million, and only $15 million in black farmer debt has been canceled. And only $250 million remains. So there's truth in that. And so what I've had to, and what I continue to wrestle with, is that this is likely going to turn out, unless the community is activated, very similar to 40 Acres and a Mule, the Southern Homestead Act of 1866, and the Pickford lawsuit, which saddens me. But I will say this, the encouragement and the faith of the black farmer. The farmers have gathered together every morning at 5 a.m. praying for justice. And that speaks to me very deeply. And I do believe that we will be victorious.
Caree, when you hear what Tracy talks about in this long fight for justice, and you work with the USDA, not to put you on the spot, but are you hearing, do we know if there is some type of momentum to resolve all this, to give justice, because so many of them now are becoming ancestors?
Yes, we want to do better. And I talked to Tracy earlier just about the ways that we would like to do better. And I am encouraged that we are taking strides to do better. And so in that, examining equity, and you talked about how do we get media and community, involved in this, and I had the pleasure to be on Rose's show to be a guest to talk about my role is to be the Director of Nutrition Security and Health Equity, which is different from what we're dealing with, but it's still our organization. And so as we think about that, being certain that we just had our very first USDA National Equity Summit where we had an equity commission really evaluating the work that we're doing and holding us accountable. My hope is that through the types of efforts that we're doing, that we will make strides. We know about the Inflation Reduction Act, and we hope that that will help in terms of recognizing the suffering that our ancestors have been through and leveraging the playing field, because it's so important. And so the efforts that we're making, again, on my side with our programs may be a bit different, but overall, I'm seeing this push toward equity. And even, again, having this role of the Director of Nutrition Security and Health Equity is so important for me to do the work and to encourage the entire organization to do the work so that we're hopeful about the strides.
And I want to stay with you for a moment, Caree, because I think when we hear that word equity, sometimes people, it's just mean everybody's going to be equal. No, there's a difference between equality and equity. Mm-hmm. And now I want to give you an opportunity to take a moment then to talk about the work that you are specifically working in with that equity piece.
Okay, and so as we look at health equity and defining health equity, it's meaning that everyone has a fair and just opportunity to be as healthy as possible. And the goal of this, as we're working toward the White House goals for the recent conference on hunger, nutrition, and health, the goals are bold: to end hunger, and I was just impressed by that the first day, to end hunger, to improve nutrition and physical activity, and to reduce diet-related diseases and disparities by 2030. So Black and brown folks have been disproportionately diagnosed with diet-related disease, and we really want to make strides toward that. So then coming back to the beginning of my title, Nutrition Security, it's a shift from the decades of work that we've been doing on food insecurity, which is not lost. That is very important. We want for people to have food, but nutrition security is defined as everyone in our country having consistent and equitable access to healthy, safe, and affordable food that is consistent or that is optimal for their health and well-being. And so as you think about that, think about the role that farmers play in that and for our communities and all the work that we're doing. And so many of the strides that I'm doing is I'm working to advance those goals at the White House, but also working as a proponent, promoting the work that we're doing in our programs. Like with WIC, we just had new proposed meals to increase the fruit and vegetable allocation for our mothers who are involved in the WIC program, improving SNAP and making sure that our SNAP participants can order food online and order it with dignity and have those conveniences.
Raphaela, in terms of what Tracy was talking about, our ancestors, those farmers who've been fighting for so long, your organization, you also are working with the next generation, the future. And when we first had our conversation just a few weeks ago, I received so many emails, people saying, wow, when I think of farming, I think I got to go way down South Georgia. But you all are sort of bucking that sort of perception, saying, look, no, there is land here in our region, but my question is, how challenging is it to acquire land just before you get to the other initiatives in your program?
Yes, definitely. It has been a struggle to afford land, especially in the urban area of Atlanta. When we started our farm business, we were actually down in rural Georgia. We were down in middle Georgia, about 3 hours south of Atlanta. And we were just traveling 60 hours a week to sell our produce to Atlanta. And it just became ridiculous. And so over time, Atlanta Harvest actually came up for sale. And we were able to purchase Atlanta Harvest, and at that time, it was just a 1-acre farm in Decatur. There were some issues with the land. It wasn't producing good crop. And we saw an opportunity in Jonesboro, which is right outside of Atlanta. We were working with someone who gave us an opportunity to rent the land, and we had brought tons of dirt in. We started planting. Things were growing great. Unfortunately, the person we were renting from decided to renege on the contract. And we were wondering, what are we going to do? And we looked and we applied to different programs that people said, you guys should get in. You have made a name for yourself. This is a no-brainer. We didn't get into these programs. And it was actually through community partnerships, other nonprofit organizations within Atlanta that saw the work we were doing and who were determined to help us continue our work, that we were able to purchase land in Ellenwood, Georgia. We were able to obtain a 25-acre farm right outside of Atlanta. And the funny thing even about that story, I wouldn't say it's funny, but interesting, was that the man that we purchased the farm from, he had said for years, developers were coming to him, offering him so much money. And he said, no, I zoned this land agriculture. I want to keep it zoned agriculture. And he said, I put fruit trees on the land. I put apple trees. I put a muscadine vine. He said, when I pass away, I want my children to be able to come to that land and still see those fruit trees there, still see that muscadine vine there. And we, over a course of a year, built a relationship with him. And he said, you know what? You guys are the right people for me to sell this land to, because I know that you will take care of this land the way I would want it to be taken care of.
Wow, wow. I'm curious, those programs that you didn't qualify for, were they federal or state programs? I'm just curious.
Yes, they were federal programs. And so earlier this year, or actually started late last year, there was that, it's called the DFAT program. There was a discrimination financial assistance program through the USDA for farmers who were historically denied opportunities to these federal and state programs. There was a grant available, and so we applied for the grant, and it was specifically for minority farmers who were discriminated against. And we pray that there is some good results from that program.
Tracy, let me come back to you, because when you hear Raphaela's journey with the harvest here, and that is she was denied, they didn't qualify for some of these programs, but it's this problem is systemic. It's still happening. So when we talk about solutions, and if it's going to be this, give me $1, holistic approach, where do we begin? Because you don't want to just pick on the federal level, or maybe you do, I don't know, or the state. If it's just a holistic approach, we still have the same problems. The new generation of farmers are still experiencing the same problem that the ancestors did.
Well, think about the Pickford legacy farmers and the reason why we pursued federal legislation. All of the farmers that we represented in federal court back in 2018, all of their debt exceeded over $1 million. There was no way to get the debt canceled unless we pursued federal legislation. And so I think it's important. I shared some of the sorrow. One of my favorite quotes from Zora Hurston is, I've been in sorrow's kitchen and I've licked out all the pots. And then I stood on a peaky mountain wrapped in rainbows with a harp and sword in my hand. And so one of our legacy farmers, Anthony Segue, one of 5 sugarcane farmers from New Iberia, Louisiana, he transitioned. He got his ancestral wings last December. And one of the things that weighed him down was this issue of debt. The debt on his farm grew from, it was 5 brothers, $500,000 to $1.6 million, right, over this 27-year odyssey. Last year, after we demonstrated in front of the White House with our elder farmers, they learned that the debt was canceled. So all the farmers that we represented in federal court, many of them, all of them from Georgia, received full debt cancellation. But the vast majority are in debt. And so even when we talk about reparations, how can you make one of the elder farmers whole when their actual damages exceeds $1 million? Philanthropy can't meet that. And so that's why we were so hopeful about the 22007, which again, it's important. Those 2 equity provisions were from the suffering of Black farmers. And so one of the things one of the elders says, Bernice Atchison, she says, vultures don't eat before lions. And so oftentimes what happens is that you have these programs and everyone is eating except our older Black farmers who have remained in debt and have not received a payment yet. So it's quite a conundrum. I would be remiss if I didn't address the issue of Secretary Vilsack refusing to release the racial demographics of the recipients of the debt cancellation and the discrimination payments. Now, if you recall, in 2020, President Trump, under his administration, less than 0.01% of the COVID relief monies went to Black farmers. Now, we don't know. There's no accountability. And it's a sad place to be, particularly when we know how devoted the Black community is to the Democratic Party and who delivered the White House.
Caree, when it comes to initiatives then that are working, and you just heard, we heard a whole lot there. We know it's not working, but when it comes to initiatives that are working, what do you want to highlight with the work that you all are doing? I mean, I know you have the My Plate initiative, but the journalist in me really wants to continue on with what Tracy just said. Is probably not fair, but I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about what is working and.
Right, so many of the things that the programs that we're working on, for example, with our SNAP participation, with our WIC program, in the last decade, we've seen increases in WIC that we haven't seen in decades. And so we know that women, infant and children are participants in WIC are healthier, that we have fewer premature births, we have fewer infant deaths. We know they are eating healthier, having more fruits and vegetables. We know that our SNAP participants are able to have access to more fruits and vegetables. So we are helping many Americans meet those needs, and I think that is so important.
Are you all able to work with providers like what Raphaela is doing, but also beyond just providing that service, moving people out of that state, perhaps, and I don't know all their initiatives, that can get people into what Raphaela and her organization is doing? Do y'all have that?
So we're working toward allowing our dollars to be more community-facing. And one of the things that I was able to do was participate at our new nutrition hub that is at Southern University. I was able to be there at the release. And that really puts the efforts to promote healthy eating in the hands of community members.
Are they able to use those benefits at a land facility like what Raphaela has?
Certainly. So when we think about across the board, when we're working with farmers markets and we're working in those, there are many ways that we can partner with community-based organizations and with farmers markets, which I'm sure you're probably a part of several of those, to where they can get double bucks back for buying fruits and vegetables and having those incentive programs in that manner. And my role, I've been in this role for a year. I'm a community-based researcher. And so as we are doing this work, and what I am bringing to this work is that community engagement piece that goes out to listen to people. You mentioned our My Plate initiative, that is our federal symbol for healthy eating. But going around the country and listening to people about how can we make this federal symbol more culturally, contextually, and linguistically appropriate.
You're out there talking to people, you're traveling, you send that message back, but then one could argue then it somehow becomes stalled. Would you agree that is a challenge? With USDA sometimes, that's a challenge. I mean, you're out there, you're meeting people, you know the folks, you with the folks, as we say. And then you go back to Washington, you're delivering all this, they have all this data.
Well, I sit
it seems like there's something stalled there.
Right, and I do sit at the table with leadership, and so when I'm out, I make it's imperative to me to bring back the stories. It's imperative to me to bring back the challenges, and that's why when I go out, I don't say, just don't tell me about the successes. I want to know your challenges so that when I am sitting in this seat and I'm sitting across from my leadership, I can give them true feedback on what people are saying on the ground. And so that is the way that we have to collect the information so things can be addressed.
But I think what folks like Raphaela, they're doing, and it's a great template. There are a lot of people that say, I would love to do what you're doing. I'm hearing all these challenges. It would be great. I think you mentioned philanthropy can't cover everything, but you are this model, this template. But what will you tell people about the struggles that it took to get y'all where you are? You don't want to discourage them, obviously. Yeah. You want to help them, and that's what y'all are trying to do. Get people today. Farming it's sexy, it's cool. You can do, but put that on a shirt. But you told me a while ago, you said you do this because it's needed and it's a love and it's a passion for you as well. And helping other people on this same journey. That's what you do, right?
Yes. And, I look back on just even my childhood and growing up. I always had a passion for nutrition. And I didn't know exactly how my career would allow me to be able to really work on a ground level to help those who are having issues with being able to access fresh fruits and vegetables. And, just speaking to the other university students here, I see there's a few here. I went to school for nutrition, and, I thought thought I was going to do one-on-one nutritional counseling, and I realized it really wasn't my thing. And life has a way of taking you on a journey, and it took me on a journey to get into farming. And there was challenges where I had family members thinking, "You're crazy, you're going into farming? Like, what are you doing with your life?" And I'm now in a place where I truly love what I'm doing every single day, and it's not work to me anymore. And to be able to now, years later, to realize this, I feel like it's been such a blessing. And so, yes, there are difficulties. Yes, there's sleepless nights. Yes, there's days where we're like, okay, how are we going to pay the bills this month? But knowing, sometimes just going to the store and someone coming up to you and saying, with you working with different organizations, being able to provide 50% off all fruits and vegetables at your store, I'm able to have fruits and vegetables for my children this week. It just makes all the difference.
I had someone email me one time and said, "Rose, why is an apple $3?" I thought, well, there's a whole nother conversation in that. As we begin to wrap up, if land is this economic metric that's been around since the beginning of time, right? And we always use certain milestones, 2030, 2050, 2040. Tracy, I'll start with you. How do we begin then to gauge what the leveling of the playing field is for people of color, land justice? How do we measure that now and in the future? What does that look like?
It looks like full debt cancellation.
Okay.
All debt should be canceled of Black farmers. It also looks like currently the discrimination payment program has been implemented poorly. The application was over 40 pages. Now, mind you, there's a comparable program called the Emergency Relief Program that benefits mostly white farmers, and they receive their payments for disaster assistance within 3 days direct deposit. So why is the application for Black farmers 40 pages? Why is it that we're hearing that the farmers won't be paid until the fall, right before the election, and they've suffered greatly? I want to say this. One of the elder farmers that got his wings, Bernard Bates, his father helped settle Nicodemus, Kansas. He grew the family land holding from 250 acres to 950 acres. He started to experience discrimination, and he wrote President Ronald Reagan. Before he transitioned, he gave us his papers, and we have it on our website. And President Ronald Reagan responded in 1983 by dismantling the Office of Civil Rights. Elder Bates was hopeful that he would be alive to receive the payments from USDA, and he died. And a lot of the Black farmers feel that the policy of USDA is to wait for them to transition to ancestorhood. That is the policy, and that is what we're trying to uproot, this deep-seated anti-Black racism that is the rot and is corroding humanity and USDA and collective rise.
Caree, how do we measure equity and justice here?
Working toward achieving equity and achieving nutrition security is so important. And again, in this role, it's so important for me to recognize that we recognize the past transgressions and we need to do better. There is change for the future ahead. And so as we are working on this, making sure that those who are eligible for our programs are able to enroll with ease, and that there are more Tracys advocating, that there are more Raphaels with their farms, that we are having the land produce fruits and vegetables so that we can achieve nutrition security. Mm-hmm. But it takes all of us. And I don't see this, I know people feel like sometimes from USDA I'm on the hot seat, but I think that I take it as a privilege, because then I can speak very directly about the challenges and hopefully be a part of the solution. Right, and so with that, just promoting nutrition security and health.
Thank you for that. Because a lot of folks won't acknowledge that. Raphaela, I'll give you the last word. What does this look like in terms of equity and land justice?
What it looks like is us working together. You know, everyone pooling their resources, and being able to come together and see that if we do not do this, our future generations may not be able to access land. They may not be able to grow fresh fruits and vegetables in their backyards. We may have young children who still think fruits and vegetables come from the grocery store and not from a farm in the dirt. And so it takes a community, a nation, to come together.
All right. Thank you. Raphaela, Caree, Tracy, thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.